Reading could be your favorite moment of the day, but you don't feel like you ever get a chance to do it. I know I love reading. It's when I get to ignore all the noise of life and I can get immersed into a story or hear what history's greatest minds have to say. It's amazing, but reality gets in the way of that romantic image. You have shit to deal with, and life drains you of your energy until you have none left for reading. Everybody says that they don't have the time to read, and that's not really true. Because even if you work long hours, 60, 70 hours a week, you still have the raw time. What you do lack, and what the real problem is energy. You have work, you have school, maybe you have kids. That all takes time, yes, but an incredible amount of effort too. So even if you do have those spare hours where you could technically sit down with a book, you don't want to, because you're done. You're done with life. You just want to sit there and do nothing. And that is the real culprit of many of our issues with lacking the time to read. It's the energy. Reading is meaningful, and everything meaningful has effort behind it. It's not like Netflix or video games where you can turn your mind off and just be effortlessly pulled into it, at least most of the time. Finding a way to balance reading with normal everyday life is so damn important, because it's already hard enough on its own, but then you have that made worse by out-of-touch YouTubers who recommend some bullshit. They're saying like, put audiobooks on 3 times speed, do these weird speeding reading tactics, all that crap. And like, get out of here with that, because there's no way they're doing that off camera. It just doesn't work. It's stupid. And we need a realistic and sustainable way to get reading done without losing your mind and completely burning yourself out. I'm happy to admit that I don't read every day. Like, I get burned out, I neglect books, and I mean, it's no secret from my Goodreads profile that I am kind of a sloth when it comes to books. And that's how it is in reality. That's okay. And despite all of that, I get it done. I read enough to feel satisfied, to be changed by the ideas, and to support all the writing I do, including the notes, which is fun in itself. So here I want to share just some of the tips that I've personally used to get some reading done, even when college was tough, when work was always present, and I just couldn't be asked. I mentioned kids before. I don't have them. So I'm not saying this advice works in that case. I have no experience there. I can't say for certain. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but you have to forgive me if I gloss over that part a bit, because I know that's a whole different reality with its own solutions, its own problems. And I'd rather just be straight up with you instead of lying through my teeth there. So hopefully it works. If it doesn't, my bad. Okay, so you've just come home from work or college. Stop. You may not see it here, but your next decision can make or break the rest of the day. It's what might separate an evening of productivity and fulfillment versus one of wasteful consumption that doesn't really give you rest at heart. When I come home, I often just lie on the ground, pull my phone out and scroll for half an hour. That's fine. It's a good way to decompress. But the problem is, like anything, it's only good in moderation. That can easily spiral into a whole evening of just wasting your time and consuming stuff. And it might feel like rest at first, but I don't know the science behind this, but it's not really, because you're bombarding yourself with 100 videos, different points, different arguments, different themes, different topics. All of this stuff is not really putting your mind at ease. It's, I guess, what you'd call destructive rest. The opposite of that could be constructive rest, where you're doing something more active and even productive, but it doesn't tire you out in the same way that work does. I can't lie, I struggle to define this, but I would put things like journaling, cleaning a room, and maybe planning your next week in this category of constructive rest. So you're still finding some peace and resting, but you also keep on that momentum and you don't completely extinguish all your motivation, like what happens after scrolling. I find that reading can fulfill that role, but only if you make the right choices. I don't know about you, but reading is not really a fun hobby to me. It's not pleasurable in the same way that a video game is, because you still have to think, you have to work, it takes effort, you have to write and dwell on the ideas. And although it's fulfilling, it's not an effortless breeze. Now, if you come home and that is all you have to do, it might not be constructive rest. It might just tire you out more and make you feel frustrated and exhausted. Fair enough. That's valid. But what you could do there is switch to something a little bit easier. Maybe you choose some light non-fiction or an easygoing novel. Something that is hopefully insightful, but not too difficult that it feels like just more work. And I find that a book of that difficulty level makes such a nice transition from college, from work, to the rest of the evening, and even between activities. So maybe give that a try. I hinted at hard books there, and that leads us well to another point. Maybe you want something more than just the bestsellers in the bookstore window. You know the ones. You want to go deeper than that, to read the classics, to read the real masterpieces of history that have defined who we are as a people. And I respect that. That's a really great thing. The problem is they can be a handful. You know how it is. History books can drag on, literature gets confusing as hell, and most philosophers, let's be honest, just don't know how to speak in plain English. So even though you really want to understand their ideas, it can be tiring to get through just 5 pages. And that is where book dropsets come in. You heard me right, dropsets. The gym bros will know where I'm going with this. When you lift weights, you have your sets and your reps. One set is a collection of reps, and one rep is just a full completion of an exercise. So, 1, 2, 3, etc. Now, normally these sets are separated by a period of rest, usually a minute to 3 minutes, somewhere there. However, if you really want to push yourself, you can do drop sets, which are a special type of set. Now, this is when you typically approach your limit on the set with a specific amount of weight, but instead of stopping to rest, you simply lower the weight and carry on. So you make it easier for yourself essentially, but you're more tired at the same time. If you're really a masochist, you can repeat this as much as you want. Every time you reach your limit with that weight and your muscles are screaming, you just lower the weight and keep going until you can't move even your hand on its own. Okay, but what the hell does that have to do with books? Well, it's not as dramatic, but you can do something similar. Now, let's say you have 3 books in your rotation. The idea is to have them varying in difficulty so that you can read no matter what your energy level is at. So let's say you have one book that's the most difficult. It's some heavy history, philosophy, something like that. You might only read a few pages of this before you feel tired and are mentally fatigued to carry on, maybe after a day at work. And you do your best there, but you kind of want to read more, you just can't deal with that. So you switch to something easier, like, it really depends, but maybe some fiction or a lighter piece of non-fiction, which is still insightful, it's still challenging, but less so than the other one. And maybe if you come home one day and you really just can't be bothered for either of those two, you pick something that's much lighter and more easygoing, like a novel. I'm speaking vaguely here because it's up to you what hard means, but the point is to have a range of difficulty so that no matter what level of tiredness you're at, you have an option that day. And you can always switch between them if you want to just keep reading. It sounds cheesy, like book drop sets, that's dumb, right? But it works. And it's what I used in college to get reading done when I just couldn't be asked for the classics or philosophy. Because you have those days where it's just too much. But hey, I know that's not for everyone. And it can feel a bit weird, like you're micromanaging your energy levels and your time. Fair enough. A more natural solution could be to get that same idea and stretch it over a longer time period. So when I was in college, some days, or weeks rather, were super chill. I felt like a NEET. I was doing nothing all day. And I mean, life was good. I can't complain. There was barely any work. But then, bang, suddenly you get assignments, dissertations, projects, all clustered together. And there is just no spare time to read. And you wouldn't dare use any spare hour for anything other than the work because you have to. Plus, there's no way I'm bending my arse over to try and understand Hegel or some other philosopher after a long day at college, on top of all of that work. That's not happening. But still, even in those busier periods, I do want to read. It makes sense for me then to stick to easier books in those busy periods. Something that's still interesting, of course, but a little more approachable and in plain English, let's say. But by no means am I telling you to abandon those more difficult works. No way. The point is we save them for quieter periods, which will usually be weekends and holidays. And in those cases, you can wake up and dedicate all of your energy to that book, like a fresh start almost. And that is really where you get the most out of it. This same philosophy of balancing your energy levels to keep up with your hobby can also apply to language learning, especially if you use Lingopie, who are sponsoring this video. Lingopie is like Netflix but for language learning, and it offers a fresh and exciting way to pick up a new language. Between the 9 languages available, there are thousands of shows that you can watch directly from that culture. And they all have double subtitles, which means you can learn the language while you get immersed into a story. Whenever you hover over a word, it automatically pauses the show and gives you an instant translation. So you never feel like you're getting lost and being rushed ahead. And if that's not enough, you can ask Lingopie to explain a sentence for you, which is super handy for going in depth at a pace that you're comfortable with. Maybe you didn't know, but I'm Greek, and I've always appreciated my Italian brothers and sisters out there. I actually enjoyed a few short films in Italian, so that hopefully I could pick up some new phrases to make it easier for myself when I maybe eventually visit someday. And even just a basic understanding of a language makes travel so much more comfortable, believe me. And like I was saying before, maybe you don't have the energy after school or work to go through this bulky language textbook. So Lingopie offers you a more chill yet still productive learning experience. When you click on a word, it's automatically added to your vocab list so that you can revise them, but also make flashcards out of them so that you can practice until they're really embedded in your memory. You can then reinforce your learning through the quiz system and even practice your speaking skills by repeating the phrases. I always enjoy when learning is diverse and it has many sides to it, so it's always fresh and you can never really get bored. If you want a new and fun way to learn languages, then you can click the link in the description to try Lingopie for yourself with a free 7-day trial. And with that, you'll also get 55% off of an annual plan. So do have a look, I think you'll enjoy it. 90% of my reading during college happened within 2 half-an-hour windows of each day. And without those, I would be screwed. I'd get probably 0 reading done. Now, forgive me, because this advice is it's so repetitive. Like, you hear it everywhere. It's become just the cookie cutter advice, but it really does work. And that is why it's so widespread. I do my reading either before work or college, or just before bed. Rarely ever during the day. I prefer the morning because A, it gets it out of the way, and B, I feel like it just kind of wakes you up a bit. Just like a morning coffee, you feel alive suddenly. A lot of my reading is actually just writing notes. So when I am writing in the morning, I feel like my mind is, what's the word? Lubricate? No, that's weird, not lubricated. Let's say warming up. My mind is warmed up and I can get past writer's block even before it happens because I've already spat some words out. I've practiced, I've typed a bit, things are good, and I get that momentum to write more later on in the day. I'm fortunate enough to be doing this full time now, YouTube. And obviously being, I guess, self-employed has its benefits, don't get me wrong, but it also has the drawbacks. And one of the big ones is that work doesn't really have a start and end time. You can work from the morning, you can work at 1 a.m. That's how it is. And it can easily become a problem where you do too much and you never turn off. But sometimes during the day, you have to say, I'm going to stop working and just leave it for tomorrow and wind down, do something else. When that point in the evening arrives for me, where I say, I'm done, no more work, that's a good time to wind down and to get some reading done. Maybe finish up a mini essay, maybe get some progress in the book itself, or just, sort out some notes, something lighthearted. Sure, work and school have cooked you during the day, but that doesn't mean you can't incorporate reading into your evening routine, where you use it as a way to settle down. Either way, whether it's morning or evening, that is precious time where the world is quiet, you're relatively uninterrupted, and you can find that solitude and peace to just go through a book. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what's best for you. I really can't say. But you probably do have one of these two things in your everyday life, and that's whether you do work, college, school, whatever. You might have a commute where you travel, or you might have breaks or periods where you're waiting in between something. What I used to do sometimes was carry a piece of light non-fiction to fill those gaps. And this would be quite easy because if you're in work or school, your mind is already active and it's not hard to, wake yourself up and start. I could read on the bus, on the train, maybe a free period during school, something like that. But I only had that chance because I was carrying a book in the first place. Did I read it always? No, obviously not. I mean, half the time it sat there doing nothing. But the point is, when I did have that time and that will to read, it was there for me. And you'd be surprised, even 10 minutes a day can add up to a fruitful life of reading. And you can get a lot done with that. I specified light non-fiction because it's easy to jump in and out of. Fiction is hard because you lose track of the story and you don't want a hard book because then you'll never read it. So you really need something that you can easily approach whenever, wherever. Intellectual burnout is a real thing. I don't have the figures here, but I think about half of all the jobs in the developed world are knowledge-based. And although it's a smaller number in the rest of the world, it's quickly rising. When I say knowledge work, I mean jobs that rely on the skills up here and not your physical body. Most people aren't in the coal mines anymore or tilling the fields. It's just not as common nowadays. That means your mind is fatigued because you're using it all day at work. And it clashes with some of your more intellectual hobbies that usually happen after work. It's okay to just take a break. There are periods in college, school, work that are just so unforgiving that you come home and you have nothing left. And that's fine. That's how life is. And you shouldn't have to punish yourself to push the boulder up the hill and just do it anyway and hustle and burn yourself out. Because, I remember there were days where I was editing all day, writing, and I'm using my mind there. I just can't be bothered to read after that. It's not happening. And even when I do pick up the book, I'm stressing about what I have to do for next week or tomorrow, or that piece I'm writing I haven't finished, or the video that needs editing, something like that. But look, taking a break may be the solution, and it's not going to ruin you as a person, so long as you can get back into the flow and find your groove a bit later on when things settle down, hopefully. You'll bounce back and hopefully save yourself in the long run instead of crashing and burning in the present. And that's it. That's everything I can think of that I've used to balance my energy levels and keep things sustainable in the long run. Now, I love to hear, as always, what you do, what maybe is something I missed. The comments are open. My email is in the About section somewhere. Feel free to message me there. I do my best to get to everything. And I also have a newsletter, which I always forget to mention. So that's linked down below. You'll probably enjoy it if you like these videos. And thanks so much for watching as always. I appreciate it.